Welcome to the Functional Health Coaching Show, where we are here to support and answer your questions so that you can help people on a deeper level get real results and grow your health coaching business. Do you have questions you want to ask live on the show? You can call in every Friday at 2 o'clock p.m. Eastern Standard Time to 1-347-637-1378. Are you looking to increase your credibility and grow your health coaching business using functional lab testing and data-driven protocols so that you can confidently solve health issues? Well, we have the course for you. Go to fdn.today/show to learn more and sign up today. Okay, let's join today's episode.
Well, TGIF, guys. Hopefully you've had a good week. Friday's a good day, as we do a Friday call every week, and we get into the weekend. But I certainly say my week is not a Monday. I don't dread Mondays because of the good work that I get to do as an FDN practitioner. But Friday just has that feel to it, especially I think this time of year when maybe the weather's changing where you are, and just comes something different in the air on Friday. So feeling good here. I'm your host for the call today, Brandon Mollet, and I've got my buddy, co-host Ryan Monahan on with me as well. So we'll be answering your calls and questions and all that good stuff. Hey, Ryan. So we're just talking about business a little bit here before we got started with just leads coming in and how different times of year you get different folks to come in and work with you based on maybe the school year or seasonal things. And it's interesting, people that reach out to you looking for help. And it's always fun to meet new folks and see how we can help them. So it is September 18th, 2020. And so getting through 2020 here, we've got the FDN conference coming up in just about a month here. So if you guys are not aware of the FDN conference and what we do, definitely go to FDNconference.com and check out the details for this year. Because of all the events going on in the world, we've had to go with a more of a virtual style conference, but it's going to be pretty remarkable how it is. It won't be just sitting at your computer and listening to speakers. There will be all the aspects of a conference that we usually have in person, where there's networking. You can connect with vendors, other practitioners, other experts. Be a lot more than just listening to a speaker on stage. So that's just October 23rd to 25th, and details, check them out there at FDNconference.com. It's just on my mind. I was just thinking about looking forward to the travel aspects of things, and this time of year, I like trying to go someplace different. So, but the virtual conference is going to be amazing. So you'll be in the comfort of your own home and have a great experience there. So check out the details on that. I think we've always got we have a special going on with tickets right now, so be aware of that. But in case I didn't say, this is the FDN Friday call, the Functional Health Coaching Show for this week. It's a live call we do with you guys every week to support you as a practitioner, FDN practitioner, or trainee moving through the course, or, hey, if you're just interested in what we do and you're trying to get a feel for it, this is one of the many ways that we're just out there letting people know that this amazing certification exists and the powerful work that you can do with it. So podcast has been around for quite a while. I think we called it just a Friday phone call back in the day, 10, 12, 13 years ago. I guess it's kind of a podcast now, but we're on all the different platforms, different videos you can watch, different ways you can get a feel for who we are and what we do. So hopefully you've tuned in maybe to get a feel for that. Or again, if you're a trainee or a graduate and you have some questions you want to ask about anything, so something in the course or a concept or something with a client or a marketing question or whatever, we're happy to take those. Number to call in to do that, you have to do it the old-fashioned way. You have to call in at 347-637-1378. Again, 347-637 and 1378. Hit 1 on the keypad. I'll know you're there. I'll call out your area code, get your name, and we can ask a question or two depending on how much time we have, and we'll do our very best to give you an answer and lead you in the right direction. Well, Ryan, what's new in your world?
Yeah, same old, plugging away, keeping busy, growing my practice, helping people answer their clinical questions in the AFDNP group, working on some exciting things in the R&D world, actually going to be testing out the not newish, the Biome Effects stool test from Microbiome Labs. So that's pretty exciting. We're going to kind of be testing that out behind the scenes and seeing if there's some, good clinical correlation, and if it's ultimately, we're going to try to determine if it might be a good fit for the FDN community.
Mm-hmm. Yes. You got a fun job, or one of your jobs. That's pretty fun, the R&D side.
It's fun. Yeah. I'm definitely a lab nerd, so it's fun to get to kind of test out some of these newer labs and newer technology, and with the ultimate goal of, making sure that FDN is staying at the cutting edge, and making sure that we're always delivering the latest and greatest to our FDN practitioners.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. We've always had that. I think we're a large enough and influential enough organization that we have a lot of people that say, hey, try our stuff, or, check this out. And lots of things come down the pipe. And we want to also, vet those very well. So we don't just accept anything. If anything, we've probably been slow to adopt some things just because we want to vet them completely. Reed does not make big changes really quickly. He's always, in a good way, cautious and wise. I wouldn't even say reluctant on changes, because there's a lot of stuff out there, and we don't want to get duped. We want to make sure we're leading people in the right direction. So we give it enough time. We're not always the first kid on the block to jump in and say, yeah, do that. But once that's been vetted, we feel like that's really good, then you guys will definitely know about it.
But yeah, that vetting process is super critical, because more isn't always better, right? And a lot of tests do have a lot of bells and whistles, but the thing that I'm always looking for in any lab test is, will this change the clinical outcome? Does this present unique healing opportunities that I would not have been able to see otherwise on, other tests that we have available to us?
Exactly.
Oftentimes the answer to that question is no, mm-hmm. That, many additional tests don't necessarily change the course of our action. So that's something to always keep in mind, especially clients that may be on a budget, right? Always be asking, how, if I did have these test results in front of me, how would that actually change the approach that I would take in working with that client? Yes,
hugely important question. It is, because you're right. You have lots of options, different things you can do, and you want to be wise with the financial side for sure, but at the same time get enough information that you can do your job and do it well. I think I know with Reed and FDN, we've found that balance. I feel like with lab testing, you find what you need to get the information that you need to guide you in appropriate recommendations. That it's always going to be a little bit of trial and error, right? We can't predict every single thing that might happen, but most of the time we're going to do pretty well. And also, an adequate enough amount of information is also motivating to the client. I have a lot of people, I'm sure, Ryan, you have too, that come to you just based on some blood scores maybe that weren't so great from their doctor annual checkup, and they want to do something different about it. So we know that lab testing is motivating, and those objective numbers are motivating for people to make some change. If it's out of a place of fear, that's not the best place to come from, but you're kind of concerned and need to do something different, or just maybe you're just trying to be very proactive and optimize health as much as you can. So as long as there's some kind of motivator there to make the change, because the change is maybe the scary thing or the difficult thing for people sometimes. But once you start to get on the other side of that change, it's so much better over here than where you were before. Mm-hmm. So it's taking that leap and trusting that all the years and experience and what we've done, we know that it works. And that should come through, on your calls and when you're doing a sales call with somebody or talking to somebody, because you know that this is what they need, and that's going to yield an amazing result for them.
Such an important point, and I say that all the time, Brandon, that the lab tests are, if anything, are a tool to be used to help motivate the client to engage in that diet and lifestyle change behavior, right? So having that lab work is a huge advantage to us as FDN practitioners. Were we to be just working with, diet and lifestyle alone, it could be the case that clients of ours would maybe not be as motivated to make those changes without seeing how it's actually affecting their body. So that's really kind of what we're showing people is how stress over the long term, and, that includes poor diet, poor lifestyle, lack of sleep, working a job that you hate, all these kinds of things that we talk about, how they're affecting the physiology. And we're showing them the proof or the evidence of that. Right? So, the thing is that, a lot of these lab tests and these healing opportunities can lead us to really similar conclusions or kind of lead us back towards these stress principles.
Indeed, I just don't know how it'd work much of any other way anymore. It'd be.
Yeah.
You're gonna. There's some good basic principles, right? We all kind of know, but sometimes for a lot of people, especially coming to us, that's not enough. There's usually the question I ask them on a call is, what's keeping you from achieving the results you want on your own without hiring me? And the question I usually get back, the answer to that usually is just a lack of knowledge or too much knowledge, too many different conflicting things out there, and trying to figure out what's right for me. I need someone to help me sort that out, which lab testing does a great job of figuring what is right for your body chemistry. It's one of the reasons why we do it, right, individualized. And also, hey, I've tried a lot. I've tried other practitioners. I just don't know what's going on in my body. I don't have the information. So the whole lack of knowledge or the too much knowledge, that gets distilled down into the lab testing side. That brings this clarity to the situation. So it's a fun thing to get lab results back. I see them pop in my email or get a notification about a lab result coming in. I immediately click on it, no matter kind of what I'm doing just about. I'm going to click on that and take a look at that because I know what that's going to mean for that person. I have an interest as far as a practitioner is really cool, but I know, wow, if I get some answers with this and what I'm seeing on this lab result, put together with what I know about this person, how is this going to affect their life? How's that R&R going to go? They don't see themselves. They can't visualize themselves 3 months or 6 months down the road, but I can. What's it going to do? So all that emotion and all that fun, that's really what's behind it when I'm looking at a lab result for somebody. So it's kind of exhilarating work, really. It is for me, at least.
It absolutely is. It's so rewarding to be able to potentially be the last person someone might have to see. And in many cases, we're the first time they've had this experience where someone has helped them to put together all of these different clues together, right? Putting all these labs together, showing them how they're all connected too, right? How they're all correlated. And many people, before they come to us, they've never had an experience like that.
Exactly. I don't know if they know what to expect always. I think sometimes during the R&R, or a lot of times I'll break up an R&R into kind of two meetings. I don't think they have any idea what they're getting into. As much as you try to explain it and kind of talk through the process and how it works with people, yeah, they're kind of like, wow. Overwhelmed in a good way is usually it, but let's kind of say, hey, I've got to lay this down. I've got to lay down the kind of foundation and the education, the science, and so all these recommendations. What we're going to do is based on this solid framework that we have here and the information about your body. But then we're going to make this into bite-sized steps and pieces, and just a little bit at a time. We work together, every couple of weeks, and we're going to meet and keep adding to this and course correct and make adjustments. And the practical steps that you can do, those are coming. We're starting to lay those out. So you don't have to memorize everything we talk about today, but just know that, hey, this is coming from a very strong point. It's not from guessing at all in any way. Observation, yes, but objective data, and it's a blast. So we get to start the journey. The real magic, I think, happens after the R&R. That's where all the changes start to come about. But the R&R is the starting point. And I say R&R is results and recommendation session.
Yeah, and like you said, and like you said, there's only so much we can do to prepare a new client that is onboarded with us for what is to come, right? And one thing I will often say to a newer prospective client is that, because I try to be as transparent as possible, so they have a mindset of or kind of a frame of reference for what to expect. And one thing that I'll often say is that this is going to be kind of like boot camp, right? This is going to be like boot camp for your health, right? Just so at least they know that they are going to be expected to make changes in their, with their eating habits and their routines and their sleep and, getting more movement and all these things, right? We're going to make a lot of change. We're also going to try to make it manageable for the client and deliver it in bite-sized pieces. But at the same time, we do have expectations, and that's another reason why we only want to take on clients that are honest about being willing to take on that kind of work.
Mm-hmm. Yes, exactly. That's some of the psychology there. That's what goes through my head.
Yep. Yeah, I find it's really helpful to manage expectations really early on, even in an initial questionnaire that a client fills out to when they're signing up for a 20-minute sales call or qualifying call. I want to let them, I want to ask them if they're a 10 out of 10 in terms of their commitment level. I want to know if they're going to be willing to take a handful of supplements every day, if they're going to be willing to set aside 5 to 10 hours or so a week towards, self-care, and that includes, everything from, meditation, acupuncture, massage, getting to bed at the right hour, all of that. And I want to get a sense of if that person's going to be a right fit before I take on someone that's going to be more lukewarm about the process and isn't just, full on ready to dive in.
It makes it better for everyone. They have better results if you invite people that are ready to go. You're going to have a better experience as a practitioner. It's going to reduce your chance of being burned out because it's really hard to pull somebody along that doesn't have the same desire and commitment to the process. It's going to be a drain. So it's we're here to help people and take people from a low point, maybe in a lot of different ways, to a higher point. But as long as they're helping climb with you, they're not just dead weight that you're dragging up the mountain. They're reaching and they're climbing as well and getting stronger as they get to the top of that mountain where you're getting to a higher level of health. They've got to help themselves too. And so, yeah, those questions have to be enough questions, enough to be able to make sure the person is right, because it's not just for you, it's for them ultimately. So if the timing's not right, then let's not spend your time or your money or your effort right now doing this process, because it's not going to yield the results that you want, and maybe just now is just not the right time. And I'm actually, in the best interest to say, I don't know that that's exactly the fit right now that's going to meet your needs.
Yep, all very good points. Not everyone's going to be as gung-ho as we are, right? As FDN, right. We're kind of a rare breed. And we're super passionate about health, but not everyone's quite there yet. And the somewhat unfortunate thing is that often is the case is that people have to kind of come to this methodology on their own terms, and a lot of times that means crashing and burning and hitting rock bottom with their health. I wish that wasn't the case. I do occasionally get clients that come to me, and they're relatively healthy with very few complaints. And they're actually interested in being proactive about their health and just getting like a baseline of understanding for what's going on with their metabolism and their physiology. And those people are rare, but that's a really intelligent investment, right? I mean, that's really the ideal time to do this kind of investigative FDN type of work, is to run some labs before you get sick. Don't wait until you develop like an autoimmune condition or some kind of other serious issue. Try to get on top of it, right? That's kind of my ideal vision or utopia for a world where we were all more interested in preventative care, and I think we're working towards that, but not quite there yet.
Yep. I think it's just unfortunate, a little bit of a product of our culture. That people aren't ready or don't understand the methodology, they haven't heard it, or I think, I guess our American culture, we all know this that live here for sure, is we expect really quick response, really quick answers, really quick results, and really for minimal effort, and that's partly due to pharmaceutical industry for sure. We know that just take a pill and it'll all be fine, but even the fitness industry is responsible too. You see these people that look amazing, and they say they did it in a certain amount of time, but maybe not really the case, or a certain fitness level you have to aspire to, or things that people are doing that aren't health building but can make a difference on the outside but not on the inside. So there's a lot of marketing and influences there that we, coming into working with a practitioner or just working on your health, people think it's going to be easy and quick, and they won't have to make much changes and much effort. So part of that's just, you're right, like you said, around setting those expectations of this. It really does take this. This is what it does take to get the change that you want. If you're ready to do that, then you're going to be so happy that you did. You're going to get awesome results. And so it's fighting against the culture also of what health is and medicine.
It's so interesting you say that. I had a very long conversation with a client about that same topic earlier this week, and she used those exact same words. That is very much kind of swimming upstream or fighting against the culture. And even if you embrace some of these lifestyle habits and foundations, you still have to kind of deal with the social aspects too, of kind of explaining yourself and to friends or family in terms of, like, if you're on a gluten-free or dairy-free diet, you're inevitably going to get a lot of questions and a lot of pushback, or even not drinking alcohol, right? That's another big one, or really going to look at you funny. That's something actually I dealt with as a teenager, and I didn't have a sip of alcohol until I turned 21, and got a lot of pushback from my friends, and was really, really kind of ridiculed and ostracized for it. And it was, for various different reasons, but health concerns were a big one. But there's various different examples of this, but it's really kind of funny too, because my response to the client during this conversation was that it's actually kind of really upside down the way that we think about things. And if you look out on a long enough time scale, even just 100 years ago, eating out of our own backyards would have been the norm, right? We would have been getting more movement and had closer, tighter knit communities. A lot of us would have been closer to living towards something that resembled like living in a blue zone culture, right? You don't have to go that far back. So what we're doing really is not all that radical. It's really the way that humans arguably live for hundreds of thousands of years and continue to do so in certain parts of the world. So this radical, rapid shift towards a push towards pharmaceuticals to suppress symptoms and towards convenience foods, like you mentioned, and not preparing our own meals. Eating more processed and refined carbohydrates and franken foods that are hyper palatable. Like just 100 years ago, or even less than that, 70, 80 years ago, those foods weren't even an option for us. They didn't even exist. So although it seems like we're kind of, pushing back against the mainstream culture, which we are, on the grander scale of things, what we're really trying to do is kind of get back to basics and get back to kind of living a life that's in alignment with what our physiology expects from us. Some people, I know Dr. Mercola, he calls it replicating ancestral practices. So that's kind of his version of dress. He calls it RAP, or RAP, replicate ancestral practices. And I know even, Chris Kresser, he says that disease, he calls it a mismatch between our biology and the modern environment. In other words, we evolved so quickly, we advanced so quickly as a civilization that our bodies were not able to keep up, right? So we can't keep up with all the processed foods and artificial light and lack of movement, et cetera, right? So that's, you could basically use this kind of umbrella definition of disease and use that to point towards why there's so much of an increase in different kinds of metabolic disorders that are increasing exponentially. So that's kind of like my little rant
No, that kind of boils it down exactly that. That's what it is. That is kind of the bottom line, what you just said there.
Yeah. Yeah. Mm-hmm. And, it doesn't mean either that we have to go back to, no one's suggesting we go back to living in caves or give up our iPhones.
Right.
But there are little things, right. But there are little things we can do that add up and make a big difference. Like you just, setting your, putting your phone in a different room an hour or two before bed, making sure you're, using those features on your phone to block blue light after the sun goes down. Little things too, like if you have to take a phone call, and you can, if it's not a video call, go outside, get some sunlight, take a walk, while you're doing that call and get some steps in. Right. Not everything has to be high intensity interval training, right? Like even just getting a few good walks in a day can make a big difference. And so many just little things we can do that can add up. And that's why I always remind my clients that, little by little, a little becomes a lot.
Exactly right. And that's the key. I think that's also something in our culture too that we have to fight against also is that little things don't matter. It's always a little bit here, a little bit there, not a big deal. Now that's actually where all the magic happens, all the change happens, because it's slowly over time we're tricked into saying, hey, we've got to make huge, massive changes, big efforts. We've got to revamp everything or go to extremes in order to get a positive result. Now there's times when you have to get, kick it into gear and get a little more serious with things more quickly. But for most people, it's not really always all that hard. It's just a shift in thinking, and a small shift in thinking, and then a shift in priorities. And it's those little things along the way. It's just the compound effect. I like the book by Darren Hardy, The Compound Effect. Lays that out with anything. Relationships, your finances, your career, your health. It's these little positive, good things that we do, multiple things on a really consistent basis. That's what adds up, and that's when you look back and say, wow, okay, look, I've been doing this for 5 or 10 years. Look at the change, or just even months. A few months just doing the right things. Look how much better I'm feeling. All right, well, good stuff. I like liking where we're going here with this conversation, but I do want to just let people know again, you're listening to the FDN Fantastic Friday call, so Functional Health Coaching Show for September 18th. It's live calls. You guys can call in. You can interrupt our awesome conversation here with a question. I do want to make sure that I read off some graduates this week. I've got them sitting here like I do every week. I want to make sure we acknowledge people that have come through the course and done a great job with it. They're certified. They're excited, ready to go. Been trained up on all the lab work, all the things that Ryan and I are talking about here. They're ready to implement those principles and to help a lot of folks. So I do want to congratulate these 3 graduates for the week. We've got Jessica Yeager from New Jersey, and then Lisa Ziegler from Florida, and Karen Rogers, Arizona. Cool. Congratulations, guys. Awesome work.
Awesome.
Very cool. Yeah, had some good conversations. That sure is a fun part.
Love it. Yeah. I like getting into the philosophical side of things.
Well, it's what undergirds it all, right? So I think a lot of people want to get into the science and too much the black and white, but you have to undergird it with the right thinking. And
totally. You need a framework. Yeah, you need it's like looking, you need a totally new set of lenses or kind of a new framework of understanding for why these principles make sense, right? And not everyone needs that. Some people are just okay to oblige your recommendations and kind of make those dietary and lifestyle changes, and they don't necessarily need that philosophical underpinning or that a deeper framework. But some people do kind of. I know at least that's kind of how my mind works. I like to kind of think of those those bigger picture kind of pieces of the puzzle and. Looking at, the anthropological side of it, even if you want to call it that, like what, and looking at different cultures across the world and which ones tend to develop disease and which ones don't, and why that might be the case. Yeah.
Where we come from, where are we going? That's the whole big picture here, for sure. How do we get here? All of that. So, hey, how do we end up eating processed food, and the vitamins have to be added to it, to make us somewhat healthy? Right. How do we get there? you know? Oh, okay, well, that was started in this, and that led to this, and this, and that's the way my mind thinks, too. I think that's really cool.
Like a lot of, one thing I'll often explain is that, processed foods largely came about as a World War II convenience to be able to send, non-perishable foods over to soldiers and over in Europe. And then that's kind of caught on because they ended up also being, convenient to prepare those foods at home and save people time. So that became, like a really kind of started to embed itself in the baby boomer generation, with those, convenience foods as a way of simplifying things, saving time, right? But it turned out that it wasn't necessarily the best for our health. So there was a trade-off there, right? There is. Now, it's good that we're able to maybe produce more food than we can even eat. So there's some improvements as far as, feeding people and things like that, being able to grow, have more children and larger population. There's goods and bads about everything. Nothing's totally black and white, good, evil, bad, good. It's just not quite that simple. But yeah, it's interesting how you get to, I'm still amazed every day. I feel like just to go into the kitchen and have more food than I could possibly eat, and I know I'm going to throw some away, and have the variety that we have. It's just absolutely mind-boggling that we can produce and manufacture goods and services and food as plentiful as we can. It's kind of an amazing time that we live in. We live like kings and queens, don't we? We do. But at the same time, I think it was a couple weeks ago we were talking about this, you and I, Brandon, on the call, that although we have all this convenience, it's also, there's also a downside to that as well, in terms of making things, too much comfort is not necessarily good for our health, because it means, not getting a lot of movement, means sitting around all day looking at screens, and being able to order things with the touch of a finger and they just arrive at our doorstep within 2 days. But, that also means that we don't have to exert ourselves very much. And that has consequences for our physiology.
Right. So now we have to pay to go to the gym and pay to fast, or pay to get really super hot in the sauna, or pay to get really cold in the, cryo tank or whatever. We've got to pay to be uncomfortable. So it's kind of silly.
Right.
But it is just the case we have.
Very, very strange.
Cool.
Yeah.
It is odd times.
Yeah,
well, guys, we're having
one thing. I'll go ahead. Go ahead, Brandon.
No, go. It's fine. Go ahead. I don't have any hands raised right now. Yeah.
Okay. Oh, yeah. I was just going to add to that paying to go to the gym is kind of a funny thing, because our ancestors, they weren't lifting weights or exercising, right? If you go back far enough, they were just constantly moving and getting a variety of different types of movement, even if that meant, kind of picking out starchy tubers out of the ground, right? Or just constantly migrating and hunting and gathering and occasionally sprinting when maybe hunting down a deer or something like that. But it wasn't, no one would have called it exercise, because it was just a normal part of life.
Yes. Just living, surviving.
It was just living, right? So, that those are, if we can kind of like just even replicate those kind of ideas in small ways, that they can go a long way.
Mm-hmm. So I think maybe the theme here, I would say, is when we kind of started this conversation about people's mindset about this and the culture and how it seems like we're going against the culture. It's just because we're don't always have a great feel for history, and we're kind of short-sighted in that way that maybe against the current culture, but for a fan of history of mankind, it's really more like it should be in the way that people have existed for a very long time. So getting back to those roots. That's really what it comes down to, and it's not an odd thing. So don't be afraid of the sun. Don't be afraid of some saturated fat. Don't be afraid of some of the things that we hear are bad for us. So fresh air and sunshine does a lot of good.
everyone listening to this conversation should Google the Lindy effect, which is a concept in statistics. But it basically is this idea that the longer something has been around without, producing, adverse consequences, without showing to be kind of, not proving itself, I guess, over the test of time, the more likely it is to be beneficial, I guess, for lack of a better term, like going into the future, right? So it's kind of just a statistical term to kind of show, that things that are time tested have proven themselves or have been time tested for a reason, right? And that if we live for hundreds of thousands of years to coexist with saturated fats and being out in the sun all day, that they're probably not bad for us, right? If anything, it's probably a very good reason that we need those things. Mm-hmm. So you might say that animal fats and animal proteins are lindy, or that the sun is very lindy. Like, this is kind of a way you can kind of use that expression. It's a pretty neat concept. Check it out. Look up the Lindy effect.
That's cool. I like that. It kind of reminds me of a quote. I think maybe Sean Croxton said that old foods can't cause new diseases. So I have that concept. Right. So if we've eaten it for thousands of years and people didn't die and stopped reproducing and had disease from something, and they were healthy, it's probably not that's causing the problem. It's probably something new we've created that has not been eaten for a long time that's probably causing more of the likely culprit.
And that's why when you read these headlines that say that the sun causes cancer, or meat or fat causes cancer, you should be very, very skeptical when you're digging into those headlines, and just consider the fact, like you had said, that these old foods or the sun is how old? Billions and billions of years old, and the Earth is something like 13 billion years old, and so I'm pretty sure that if we were living under the sun for so many hundreds of thousands of years, that it all of a sudden something couldn't have changed where the sun, it causes cancer, right?
Mm-hmm. It's not the only causal factor alone.
It's not right, exactly. And many of these headlines are super reductionist, and they're looking at a single variable without considering in that population study, what are those people eating? Are they smoking cigarettes? Do they drink a lot of alcohol? Do they exercise? Right. So correlation isn't necessarily causation. Actually, they brought up a funny point in that book, Sacred Cow. About a month ago, I brought it up on a call. And there's this effect, there's this phenomenon where I think it was every time a movie with Kevin Bacon comes out, there's an increase in pool drownings, right? And apparently this is like a true fact that this actually happens. But their point is, obviously, Kevin Bacon being in a movie doesn't cause people to start drowning in pools, right? It's just a very strange, what you call a spurious correlation, right? So just because two things are correlated doesn't mean that they're causative, right? So, again, just because a study comes out that says that the sun is related to people developing skin cancer doesn't mean that's actually what's causing it. Right. So always be thinking about that too, that the Kevin Bacon effect, is it correlated? Are they correlative, or are they causative? Right. It's a lot harder, much harder from a scientific viewpoint to determine that two things are related to each other in a causative way. Very, very easy to throw up a headline to show that two things are correlated. But that's not really science.
Exactly. That's what with the FDN process there, it's not just one thing we focus on. We're not just a one-trick pony, or we have just, everything's looks like a nail when you only have a hammer. FDN is a multifaceted, attack on metabolic chaos in a way. So kind of coming from all different angles, multiple angles. So, and that's why it works so well, because rarely is any one symptom have only maybe one cause. It's very rare. It's going to be a combination of factors that get kind of mixed all together. So that's why it works so well, because it is hitting from so many different angles, because it's rare that you have a person that does get some disease. It's on the rare side statistically that it is just one thing. Yeah, you exposed to a chemical spill and you got a terrible disease from that. Okay, that's probably a one single cause thing, but that's really few and far between. Most things are a continual process of metabolic chaos over years or decades that leads to some of these ailments that we see so much. So I always enjoy when those articles come out, and clients might bring those to you. I usually get a few emails from clients. Hey, did you see this article? Whatever. What do you think about it? I don't respond immediately to them, because I know in about 3 or 4 days, all the people that I follow will have some kind of rebuttal to that article and show where the science is really bad, or show where the study and what they're doing, the data, it really is like you're saying, Ryan. It's like that's not what the data is actually showing, and they help you kind of refute that and know that why is that just kind of a distraction and part of the some propaganda really is what it comes down to that's out there. So don't be quick to jump or quick to freak out that you recommended the last 100 people you talk to eat good quality meat. That's just because an article comes out in the news about red meat maybe being an issue there for people. Don't fret. You probably did not hurt them. Very likely did not hurt them.
Yeah, with that example specifically, these studies. Actually, I don't think there's any study on red meat that makes the distinction between grass-fed and conventional feedlot cattle, right? Like grain-fed beef, right? So not all meat is created equal, right? So that's like a whole other topic. These studies, are always looking at conventionally raised beef, and then even if it was looking at grass-fed beef, then you have this issue of the healthy user bias, which I alluded to earlier, which is like, are they otherwise eating healthy food? Did they have a bun with that burger? And are they sensitive to gluten? And is that actually the source of the inflammation and the link to heart disease or cancer, right? Again, looking at other habits like sleep and do they exercise? Do they otherwise eat a healthy diet and a variety of vegetables and healthy fats? And it's just, you can't just look at like a single food and say that yes, this causes cancer without looking at the tens of thousands of other variables within that person's day-to-day lifestyle.
Mm-hmm. And that's our job as FDN practitioners, to look at all the variables. And that's why we ask you 1,000 questions, all your symptom points, and we get into every aspect of your life, because that is the key, not just one thing. So,
yeah, you
cool.
mentioned too,
right.
That it's usually a combination of factors. It's aggregate. Sometimes I'll say that someone's chronic symptoms, it's not necessarily one root cause. Even it's like a death by 1,000 cuts is one way to think of it, right? It's an aggregate of chronic stressors that have accumulated, likely over decades or a lifetime, and that has eventually tipped the scales, and the symptoms were the last thing to occur. But what has been bubbling underneath the surface, if you want to use that kind of analogy, for so many years was inflammation and blood sugar dysregulation and oxidative stress. And, all of these kind of tying back to poor diet and stress and lack of sleep and exposure to toxins. And, we put all that together and help to try to reverse the metabolic chaos and kind of reset the clock on the physiology and get people back to feeling optimal, which we believe as FDNs is the body's natural default state, is to function normally, that we were, this kind of underlying belief that we're designed to work, we're designed to feel good, that it's not normal to wake up every morning with chronic fatigue and brain fog and allergies and digestive complaints and all those things that our clients come with us to.
Mm-hmm. Amen to that. Love it. That's it.
Heck yeah.
Love it. Well, about 15 minutes in the call, guys. So if you do want to, ask a question, we're happy to talk with you there. Number 347-637-1378. We're having just a good conversation here. Ryan and I are. I think it's all really good things you guys need to hear and be thinking through. But we are happy to answer some questions. I've got a few written in. I think we'll try to get to here in a second. But we'll just kind of give it a shout out there for callers and questions. We have about 15 minutes left. Usually that's maybe 2, maybe 3 questions we can answer in 15 minutes if we're concise. So you guys don't be shy there. Don't wait till the last 5 minutes. That's kind of tough on us to make us do a 5-minute answer. That's hard for me and Ryan. All right. Well, I'll get a written in one here for us. So training one here, I believe. Okay. Kind of a longer one here. I'll just kind of read through it and we can pick it apart a little bit. So an FDN trainee haven't gotten very far into the training, but they're struggling with their own health issues, have for years now. And I'll pause right here. A lot of people, right, you come to the FDN course, you want to work on your own health as well as learn how to help other people. That's a big part of the course, so you're going to run labs on yourself. So that's part of the course. You've got to do FDN on yourself. The same things you're going to ask your clients to do, you want to do as well. So this person's, getting double benefit from the course. So their own health's improving as they're learning here. So kudos to you for signing up, even though you don't feel awesome. You're making it through. Since having my son, I developed chronic hives. After doing GI testing, food sensitivity testing, and hormone testing, I've been working on correcting it all over for a year now. It sounds like she started working with maybe an FDN practitioner style person, it sounds like, before she started the course. I took out my 21 food sensitivities, and that has helped me tremendously. My recent hormone testing came back surprisingly good. I just had low testosterone and DHEA, so on the androgen side. My main issue is hives. They have been controlled every day except for about 3 days before my cycle. They came back with a vengeance and leave about 3 days after my menses has started. I kept thinking it was an estrogen issue because of the estrogen and histamine connection. But I recently read a case study about how you can be sensitive to your own progesterone. It equals ADP. With my hormone testing being fine, I can't figure out if my chronic hives could be coming back every month cyclically because of estrogen or progesterone. Have you ever had a client struggle with chronic hives only during their cycle? Any recommendations for me? That's interesting, little kind of a mystery there. So, Ryan, do you have any insight on that initially?
Yeah, I like this one actually, and hopefully the FDN that submitted that gets to listen to this call, because that was my primary health challenge for more than a decade of my life. I'll say no, so not hives directly, but histamine kind of related issues, which can of course kind of present itself as hives. But for me, it was chronic allergies and sinus infections and sinusitis and runny nose, itchy eyes, all that kind of hay fever type stuff that can be associated with histamine intolerance. And this ties in nicely to what we were talking about. For many years, I was kind of looking for the silver bullet solution. Even in my early 20s, I had a number of surgeries in my sinuses to actually help to open up the breathing ways, because I was congested all the time and I was a mouth breather. I couldn't breathe through my nose. It was that bad. But that was a long time ago, and I had never considered all these things that we do as FDNs, and no specialist or doctor had ever asked me anything about my diet or lifestyle, or had suggested food sensitivity testing or gut testing, hormone testing, anything like that. So kind of fast forward to today. I've been able to completely resolve my histamine issues, and it was really kind of gradually chipping away at it by looking at all of these different factors between nutrient deficiencies, gut infections. For example, one of my GI tests came up with blastocystis hominis, and that does have a connection with hives. That's one of the more well-associated correlations with blasto, as we call it for short, and any kind of general like histamine activation, mast cell activation type issues. So, one thing that happened when I eradicated that Blastocystis hominis with natural herbal protocols, I completely relieved myself from my dependence on I totally forgot the word, inhalers. I was on inhalers pretty much on a daily basis for many, many years. And it has probably been 6 years since I've even touched one. Don't even worry about it anymore or feel the need to travel with one. In the past, that would have scared me to travel without one, because I used to have pretty bad asthma attacks, and I'd always have one with me in case of emergency. But I don't even travel with one anymore. So that was one thing that made a huge difference in my life, was cleaning up my gut health, just something that's paramount in terms of what we do as FDNs. Then, part of the puzzle for me was methylation issues. So I do have 2 copies of the MTHFR gene, which is one that's pretty well known that can potentially have an effect on slowing down methylation. And methylation is one of the most critical processes in the body for helping us to break down histamine. In other words, if our methylation is impaired because we're not getting the right nutrients in the diet, or if we're not exercising, if we're super stressed out, those that can put more demand on our methylation. So that's a really big key piece of histamine issues like hives that a lot of people miss, is that and in order to restore proper methylation, a lot of it goes back to the basics, diet, rest, exercise, and stress reduction. Potentially, looking at whether you've got deficiencies in like folate or B12 or things that might affect or slow down methylation. But that's another big one I'm always looking at with hives or histamine issues. What else am I thinking here too? B6 is a vitamin that's really a nutrient that's really critical for helping our body break down histamine. Actually, this one is really, really underrated, but water is just regular H2O, good quality like spring water or filtered water is one of the most important things your body needs to help break down histamine, believe it or not. That goes really underlooked because we often like to look for fancier solutions to things, but that sometimes people just need to remember the basics, like drinking enough water every day, right? And so the general rule there is to take your body weight and divide it in half, and then that's how much water you want to get every day in ounces. So say if you weighed 150 pounds, you'd roughly want about 75 ounces of water a day. Most people probably are not getting that. That's roughly going to be about 8 to 10 cups of water a day, or roughly about 2 liters if you're more into the metric system. So, those are some things I would think about. Gut infections, nutrition, looking at potential methylation issues or like B vitamin deficiencies. What am I missing, Brandon? What do you think about when you see hives? What do you tend to think about?
I think all the things you're talking about there, I'm just trying to figure out with her specific question here, why she does tend to see an uptick in those right before and after her menses. So like a week, it sounds like that there's an uptick to it. Is there some direct connection we can make, or is it just, I think kind of what you're saying here, just make sure you're crossing all your T's, dotting all your I's, give it some more time, and maybe some retesting might be involved. Make sure you get the fundamentals there first, instead of trying to figure out some fancy pathways connection or something.
Yeah, there could be potentially some kind of, maybe cycle mapping could potentially be beneficial to see, because there is an association between elevated estrogen and histamine, for sure. Whether that's actually what's going on is hard to say without, kind of running maybe like a cycle mapping and seeing if for some reason there's a surge of estrogen right around menses and the menstrual cycle. But even if that was the case, typically, if you look at what causes elevated estrogen, it can be gut dysbiosis and other pathogens. It could be liver congestion, right? So the liver is probably going to need a lot of love if you're dealing with hives, whether those are occurring at a specific time in your cycle or not. I would think that just general liver support would be really helpful, because that's how our body breaks down excess estrogen, right? I guess I do think it kind of comes down to, looking at just looking at the body globally and trying to fix everything, right? And that's why we're generalists and we look at the body non-specifically. And yeah, we can get down some rabbit holes with looking at some more advanced stuff like methylation or cycle mapping to see if there are irregular movements going on with estrogen that could be, related to histamine. But I've found that if you get too down those rabbit holes, you might lose sight of what is actually going to help you in the long run, which is cleaning up the gut, supporting the liver, optimizing the diet, removing inflammatory foods. Maybe in the short term, doing a lower histamine diet could potentially be helpful. It's not, it's more of a therapeutic approach. Doing a low histamine diet isn't by no means is going to fix the problem or get to the root of it, but it can be used really effectively for symptom management. So if you're every single day, if you're eating, cured meats and canned salmon and cheeses and different, all kinds of fermented foods like sauerkraut and kombucha, if you're eating a lot of chocolate, someone could easily be eating those foods, all of those foods every day, and not even realize that they're kind of flooding their body with histamine. So for one person, they might be able to do that just fine and metabolize and break down all that histamine from the diet just fine. But for someone else that already has maybe like a higher internal threshold or level of histamine to begin with, because of different factors going on, between gut health and liver health and so on, methylation, that person might be super sensitive to adding even the tiniest amount. It's kind of like if the bucket is filled up to the top and you add just one more drop of histamine from getting like a forkful of sauerkraut, then the bucket kind of tips over and spills over. And then you can end up with all these issues related to excess histamine, like hives. So look at all of it.
Yeah, it might be worth it maybe doing just a food journal. I don't know, maybe you're changing possibly some of the things that you eat or do around that time. Maybe it is something that it's not. Yeah. It's a result of maybe how you're feeling or mood, different things like that. Maybe you do eat some different foods around that time, and it's not necessarily the cycle or the hormones that's causing the problem. It could be something kind of as a related, connected point to that behavioral change around that time potentially. So
for example, doing like a low histamine diet around menses.
Right. Exactly.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Yeah. Just during that time. Right.
Right. Yeah. Just to see if there's some factor there. Yep. It's and I know. I guess it may sound. I don't know. This is bad to say, but I'll say it. In a lot of ways, I'm glad I'm not a cycling female because that's something that women have to deal with every month. And I've had women that have typical like PMS symptoms, right? We're familiar with those, but then all sorts of other random symptoms that do get elevated at certain times in the cycle, and that's where it's good to be able to have a person log things and chart things, so you can say, well, I get really anxious or something 1 month out of it seems like it's on a cycle or something. Every 3 weeks or so, I get really anxious. Well, it does follow that rhythm there. So there is something, the hormones are having some influence on that, but is it truly the hormones, or is it something because the body is putting out a lot at that time, or there's some side residual or downstream effect from the hormones that's there. So hopefully that gives you some things to think about. It'd be something to continue to kind of unpack. Maybe it's just kind of doing more of the same and going deeper. But I think just like we talked about in the beginning, FDN works. It's a multifaceted approach, and I'd say keep going. That's probably you're going to find some resolution there. All right. Well, guys,
And there are
about,
always,
20 seconds left or so in the show.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Want me real quick? You got
No,
10
you're.
seconds.
I didn't realize the time. I realized we're just got a minute left. So take it over.
I get the clock, and you're kind of. I love it. So so we're wrapping up here on the call, guys. But it's been a great discussion here. Hopefully, you guys found some benefit to that. Some of the ways to think about what we do, and then the answer here. Hopefully, we've given a little bit of help here to this trainee. And then we do want to say congratulations to Jessica, Lisa, and Karen, 3 graduates for this week. And just a big thanks to you, Ryan, for being on with me each week and providing such great answers and insight. Really do appreciate you.
Yeah, thanks, Brandon. Likewise. And I'm happy to be here and helping people out.
Well, guys, have a great weekend, and we'll talk next week.